Your mindset is a true reflection of the person you are. You ever heard that saying before? I talk about mindset all the time, and today's no different. But I'm going to be talking about mindset in terms of athletics and how a positive mindset can have a really profound effect on the younger generation and how it can be translated off the field, off the track, off the court, and into the real world. So, my guest today is going to be talking with me about that. So, grab a seat, grab a drink, let's dive in. This is the Spehar Initiative. So, just as I mentioned off the top of this episode, right at the beginning of the intro, I asked the question, or not a question, but it was more of a statement. I said, your mindset is a true reflection of who you are as a person. And I talk about mindset all the time, and I want to talk more about how a positive mindset has a really profound effect on the younger generation in the world of athletics and how that can be translated into the real world. So I have with me a gentleman who thinks like me, who wants to make changes in this world for the younger generation, future generations, Mr. Rob Pallante. Rob, thanks for joining me today, man. How's it going, buddy?
It's going awesome. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's great to be able to connect with like-minded individuals, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my message with your audience.
Absolutely, yeah. You're welcome anytime. And this is what we need more of. We need more connection in a world of division right now. We're seeing this more and more, and like we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but I want to focus more on the mindset and what you do. And give us a little bit of a background, what you do now, your company, why are you doing it, and just shed a little bit of light on that.
Sure. Well, I know we only got 45 minutes, so I'll try and keep it under that. Let time give me a chance to speak in a soapbox, and I'll just ramble on, so you can shut me down anytime. So the Coles Notes version was, grew up in Mississauga, typical Canadian kid from an Italian background. And I got into sports very young and early. Hockey, I migrated to hockey and soccer. By the time I got to, probably 13, 14, had to make a decision to choose one sport. It started getting serious, so I chose hockey, and the sport was very good to me at that time. I had an opportunity to play on some championship teams back in what was the MTHL, now the GTHL, and the footprints expanded, the sport's growing. I was drafted into the OHL, 52nd overall in 1986. Turned it down to take a scholarship, went to Michigan Tech. And that's really where, if I look back what I'm doing now, where if I could talk to my old self and give him some advice, it would be 18-year-old me, right? Up until that point, I had everything came, we'll call it easy. I worked hard at it, but I enjoyed what I was doing. I really didn't have a whole lot of adversity to deal with at that time. Ran into a little bit of that in my first year at Michigan Tech, where I went to school, 3 days on campus. A true freshman, just turned 18 years old, so that was very rare. And went to my first frat party. Probably stayed a little bit longer than I should have. We hadn't even started training camp yet, and I was with most of the guys on the team. Stayed a little bit longer than most of them as well, and myself and a senior by the name of Randy McKay wind up getting into a disagreement with some of the guys that were at the frat, and we got in a fight with 5 guys in a parking lot, and I broke my hand.
Oh,
Welcome
wow.
to school. So from there, I went into that didn't bother me at the time. I think it bothered the coach more. And then I found myself struggling to become, a regular in the lineup, and couldn't figure out why. And we can talk about all those things. Long story short, I was able to continue with my hockey career. I missed my draft year because of the injuries and my lack of playing time, but was later invited to 5 NHL camps. Went to the Minnesota North Stars when they were still in Minnesota back in '92. Did very well. Not a contracted or drafted player, so kind of got caught up in the numbers game. Played in the minor leagues for about 4 or 5 years. Left hockey, and that's another discussion point we can get on. But I left with a very bad taste in my mouth of what I felt the game did to me, and then I went into the corporate world. Spent 25 years in corporate in various capacities, from sales, uh, moved up to national sales, VP of sales, EVP of companies, running sales, biz dev, some marketing roles. Got into the consulting component the last 4 or 5 years of my corporate life. And then life turned on me very quickly in 2015, August 22nd to be exact. I was going through a divorce. I had 2 young kids. I was on my Harley riding down from a friend's house who I was couch surfing on to pick up my daughter, and I was about a block away from the house, and I got hit by a woman on her phone. I spent 40 days in Hamilton General. Pretty much crushed the left side of my body. I was given my last rites the first night in the hospital,
Oh, wow.
and required 9 surgeries. So it was, as I look back now, it was a turning point for me. It was the worst day, but eventually became the best day, because I had to leave behind who I was and had an opportunity now to look forward into who I could become. And a lot of that stemmed off of a comment that a nurse said to me after I got out of ICU. She said, you know, you've been lucky. We've had people with less injuries not survive. You've been given a second chance at life. Don't waste it.
Wow.
And when you're laying on your back for 40 days, you get a lot of time to think about who you want to be based on what she said to me and who I was. And, it wasn't clear at that time, but I knew that I couldn't continue living the life that I was living, and I had to make some changes. And I felt this urge to get back into sports, which I walked away from 25 years earlier, and wanted to be of service and give back. And so it opened up the door for me, because I started reading, did more reading after or while I was in the hospital and after I got out than I did in school at any time. I really found a connection between the mind and the body while I was in the hospital. I was told I was going to be in there for 120 days. I walked out in 40, and multiple injuries and surgeries. And it was a decision that I made, that I needed to get out. My ex-wife did not work, so I was the sole provider. I was a contracted employee at the time. If I'm not working, I'm not making money. I had 2 young kids. My kids were 9 and 7, and I felt this great responsibility to be able to continue providing for all of them. And whatever it was that took place there, it opened up a world for me that I think I've been able to now further explore, and take all of those experiences that I had leading up to that moment and put them together into this program that I'm built now for young athletes. And it's all about the mental side of the sport, and teaching them how to create fundamentals that are going to last beyond just the sport, but for life. Because we know that our sports life, even though we all think we're going to be playing, at the highest levels someday, the reality is that we don't know what's around the corner. Just like I didn't know what was coming for me that day. I just thought it was another beautiful Saturday sunny morning, taking my daughter to her soccer game that I was coaching, and didn't make it. Thank God she wasn't on the bike with me.
Mhm.
But it was a turning point, and now I wake up every day feeling grateful for the opportunity to be here, and thinking, how can I be of service to other people? that's my goal, my intention in a nutshell. And sort of what was the start of Mindset Body Bank, which is the
Mhm.
company that I have that works with young athletes, pros too, on building that connection between the mind and the body. And the bank component is really how we make deposits into ourself on a daily basis.
Nice, nice. So you had a renewed sense of purpose when you were in the hospital then, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's amazing how
It's a great way
sometimes
to put it.
sometimes you need that big event to really kind of give you that little jolt to say, wake up. This is you got to do this now. Like this is what you're meant to do, right?
The big man took me within inches of my life and said, um, and then sent somebody in to say, you're not done and you have purpose now. And like a lot of young people, I spent a lot of my time chasing material things in the external world, and became very apparent to me when I was lying there that the house, the car, the brand, the clothes, the things that I thought were important, that that made me who I was, were not important.
Hmm.
And I was doing things to please people that I didn't really like.
You got to look out for number one. Look out
Absolutely.
look out for yourself. And yeah, you're gonna upset some people along the way. I've done it myself, but that means you're doing something right. You're ruffling the feathers, but you're on your path. So you stay the course, you just stay focused on your goal and your purpose, and don't worry about upsetting anybody else. Who cares what everybody thinks?
One of the first things I tell a lot of the young athletes that I work with is other people's opinions of you are none of your business. And it's a very difficult thing to wrap your head around when you're a young athlete or a young person and you're trying to make way and you're trying to impress people, and you always feel like you might be doing things for other people. I have to impress the coach, I have to impress my parents, there's scouts at the game watching, or if you're in the corporate world, my boss is judging me. We're constantly in this external world, and we're not taking enough time to look intrinsically. And you used the word purpose. um, and I really found a purpose. But it wasn't until I was 45 years old, lying half dead on the side of a road in Waterdown, Ontario, and going through the recovery and all the experiences of that, coming out of it, and making a promise to myself that that I had more to give the world, and give back. And when you find that sense of purpose, it really changes your perspective. And that's really what mindset
Yeah,
comes down to. Everything I do, I'm just shifting the way you look at things, right?
yeah,
You take an object, and instead of looking at it head on, you turn it around, you flip it upside down, look at it from all angles. And
exactly.
mental game, that's all we're doing is just shifting people's perspectives.
Yeah, and that's all it is. Just like you just said, just a small little shift, see it from a different angle, and it changes your perspective on everything. It's remarkable, remarkable.
Absolutely.
So now going on to the sports thing,
Yeah.
um, when when I was growing up, I had these goals of and dreams of being an NFL player and being like John Elway doing the drive in the last the last 90 seconds, and everybody has that dream and want to be that professional athlete, but they don't really look at what goes into being an athlete, right? They just like, okay, I'm gonna go sign up and be part of a team and play and do my best, and here we go. But you're not looking at all the little things, the things that happen in like behind the scenes. Like you got to do the studying, you got to look at like the playbooks, whatever sport you're playing. You got to understand the terminology. You have to understand how to work with your teammates, be a leader, listen and get support from people of authority. People don't see that. For some of the athletes that you've been working with, do you see that? Do they understand what is required to become that peak performing athlete?
Well, I think, if they're working with me or they're working with somebody that does what I do, it's typically because they don't understand what it means to be fully committed. Everybody wants to stand, everybody sees, the championship team raising the trophy, or that individual, with the gold medal, and they all think, oh, that would be so cool to be that person. To be, to be the champion, or to win. What they don't understand is what goes on to get there. And what I call that is the process. You have to fall in love with the process. At the end, that's the outcome. And I use a little formula when I'm introducing my athletes to the mental game, and it's E plus R equals O, and it stands for event plus response equals outcome. And in that equation, we don't control the event and we don't control the outcome. All we can control is our response. And your response is either one of two things. It's either emotion or behavior. One of those will influence the outcome the right way. One will influence it the wrong way. So what we're talking about is falling in love with the process. As you are going to incur adversity and obstacles, how you respond is really, going to propel you forwards or make you take a step backwards. And it's getting people to understand that I have to let go of that outcome and focus on what's important next, being in the moment, right? And so I take my athletes through a whole process which chunks everything down into success blocks, and I create visual tools for them that makes it very easy for them to understand that. A lot of times we have these ideas in our mind about where we want to go, and we're so focused on the outcome that we forget about what the next step is to get there. And if we don't get there, we consider ourselves failure. But I look at failure as fuel and an opportunity to learn. So
Absolutely.
sort of the roundabout way, I think, questioning.
I like the ladder analogy, how you get all the rungs on the ladder, and most of us wanted to at one point, make that first step and then just get right to the top. You just ignore everything in between. But it's those little steps in between that will get you to that goal. It could be a lot.
Yeah, you can't avoid those.
No, you can't.
Can't
And
skip them.
yeah, you have to learn that. You have to understand that. So do you tailor your approach to different sports? Like, are you just specific to hockey, or do you look at different athletes from like baseball, football, curling?
Yeah,
I'm gonna put curling in there.
yeah, no, so interesting. Coming from the hockey background, my perception was, well, I'm going to reach out to all the guys that I know that are still in the game, and that was the hardest group to get through to. So I actually cut my teeth on soccer players and football players when I first launched my program back in 2019. Eventually, I got into, I started doing more in hockey, and I'm doing more and more in that sport. I have swimmers, soccer players, hockey players, so I don't limit it to the sport. What I do is, the mental side of the game is the same based on the sport you're playing. I adapt the techniques that I would use and the language to the sport, right? You're not going to have a hockey player visually or going through visualization and mental rep exercises that a swimmer would, right? They're just different things. You've got a solo sport versus a team sport. So I get people starting to think about their particular sport. We create what I call a success checklist. It's almost pretty standard. The language and some of the nuances are different, but the methodologies are the same. Whether you're playing, a solo sport, a team sport, whether you're a sales guy, a marketing person, it really doesn't matter. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're creating this foundation of tools that you can use, that when adversity presents itself, and we all know it's going to, you are able to take a moment before you react and choose your behavior. And that's just really whittling it down to a very simplistic form,
Mm.
is mentally making a choice on how you're going to respond and
Right.
what tools you're going to use.
Right. Yeah. And interesting you say you talk about reaction earlier and how you respond in the moment. And more often than not just the like teenagers and younger generation, adults too, really react based on past program. When I say past program, I'm talking about like how they were brought up in their household, right? So they're reacting unconsciously based on what has happened to them in their life. So they see
Yeah,
something, they get triggered, and that's how they react. So we need to really look at those reactions and emotions and become emotionally stable in order to look at that and not react.
yeah,
Right. So one thing I did before a few years ago, I was an athletic scout, and yeah, I looked at all the physical traits, the height, the muscle, and how they do things on the field. But one thing I actually really looked at is how they were acting on the sideline. If they did something wrong in a game, how did they how did they come to the sideline? Were they all pissed off, throw their helmet down, or throw their bat and glove, and just like don't even talk to the coaches, and just sit by themselves on the bench? Or did they come to the sideline and say, "Okay, it's on me. I'm taking accountability. I'm going to come back and learn from what just happened and become stronger." You know,
it's
those
a,
are it's a very key thing when it comes to athletic scouting.
yeah, what you're talking about there is self-awareness, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times, young athletes don't really have that self-awareness unless it's brought to their attention. And three of the key areas that I look for, and I love that you're looking at kids that are on the sideline, and anybody that's listening that has kids or participating in sports or coaches, some of the most important responses are not goals, points, outcomes, assists. It's those responses to the adversity. So part of my program is creating, I call it signal lights, right? So imagine a traffic light. You've got your red, your yellow, and your green light. And every athlete knows what it's like to play in the zone, right? When it's things you're just lights out, unconscious, things are just happening. It's almost like slow motion, right? I can tell by the smile on your face, you've been there. You just went into your reticular activating system and said, I remember what that feels like, right? But that's what it does. Your physical reaction to that, it changes your physiology, right? It puts you back into that moment where you can remember it. And that's what the green zone is. And there's three areas in all of those that I encourage the athletes to write about so that they can recognize them when they're going through self-awareness. That's body language, self-talk, and focus. So if I was to ask you, Rob, just with that little smile on your face and the physiology that changed, what were you thinking about in that particular moment when I talked about being in the zone? Was there a particular play, something that happened to you, or a particular game that you're like, oh, I remember that feeling?
It's a feeling of being unstoppable. Like I can do anything. And it's like good luck trying to stop me. It's that kind of a feeling.
Yeah. And if I was to say, what was your body language like? Like, were you like staring at your coach in the eyes, looking at your teammates, high fiving, amped up?
Huh.
That kind of described the moment.
I would forget everybody and be like, it's like I'm by myself on the field. There's nobody
So
around.
that would be relative to you. The next part I would say is, what's your self talk like? What's going on in your head as you're in that zone?
Talking myself up.
Right? Got this. Things are good. I'm going to take this guy out.
Hmm.
This is my world. I own the field. Whatever it is, right? All
Hmm.
that positive self talk. And the other part is what your focus is. When you described it, when you said everybody out there doesn't matter. I'm just focused on me. You're in the moment, right? So when we get an athlete to understand what he feels like with his body language, his focus, and his self talk, and he's in his green zone, that's becomes a reference point. At some point, they're going to slide from a green to a yellow and a yellow to a red. And what
Yep.
I have them do is identify what their body language, their focus, and their self talk is like in each of those zones, right? What they
Hmm.
can then do then is when they feel themselves sliding, we go through using breath work and some other mental cues to bring yourself back. Ideally, every athlete wants to spend as much time in the green light zone, or the zone, um, as much as they can, right? Because that's where the optimum level, the peak performance is. It happens in that zone. So
Mhm.
becoming self-aware and knowing when things aren't going well, when you're talking negatively to yourself, when you're slumped over, when you're looking down, when you're kicking dirt, when you're visibly not in the moment in the game, those are all tell signs, golden tickets, if you will, that alert us that I am not where I need to be and I need to get back. How you do that is part of the process that I work on with the athletes
Yeah.
when they have a break in the play, on the sideline, on the bench, whatever it is. And when you develop that sense of self-awareness, now you become unstoppable.
Self-awareness and self-realization. Those are two powerful things. I like the self-realization, having the other person come to the realization of something without me pushing them. Now, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? Same thing goes for human interaction. You can provide the information, you can't make them see things. That they need to see these things on their own. And when they can do that, that's when things can start happening. And it's great that you talk about self-talk, because when you're really in your head, like you are taking yourself out of the moment in a way, right? And
Totally.
you can be like, yeah, you got this, I'm the best, I can do this. But more often than not, I would say that a lot of the self-talk is negative self-talk. And when I say that, it's like, don't mess up, don't drop the ball, don't make an interception, don't, put the puck in the stands. Of course, when you're focusing on that, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
But like you said, self-awareness, being in the moment and not having that kind of self-talk. I mean, you can have self-talk, but not having that and being present where you currently are, that is key.
Look, we're all human, right? And we don't control our thoughts. Things are going to pop into our head, right?
Mhm.
As humans, we have anywhere between 15 and 60,000 thoughts a day. And 90% of those thoughts are negative and 85% are repetitive. So if you understand that, then you can start to take hold of your thoughts. Everything we do starts with a thought, right? Starts with a thought. Thoughts lead to what we say becomes our actions become our habits become our legacy, right? So if we can catch it here, interrupt those thoughts through self-awareness or self-realization, then we can bring ourselves back to the present. You said, you mentioned, I'm not in the moment. I have this theory that I use. It's called the floating head, right? So if your thoughts, as an athlete, your body is always in the moment, right? Always has to be present. If your thoughts are in the past, then you're dealing with thoughts of frustration, anger, annoyance, typically. And if your head is moving into the future, you're typically thinking about things like concern, fear, nervousness, right? Your body senses all of that. So your physiology is reacting to those past thoughts or those future thoughts. And we agree that the mind and body need to work together to reach that peak performance. If you're operating from the past or the future, which don't exist, then you can't be present. And
Mhm.
so we have to bring our head back into the moment
Yep.
through some of the mental skills that I teach to be able to connect with the body, mindset, body, be present and work on your peak and operate in a peak performance mode.
Yeah, and it's those past moments too that we need to look at, not really suppress, regardless of how much they've affected you in the past. Like, you have to look at it, forgive it, give yourself, and when you do that, that's when you become emotionally stable. You're not reacting like we talked about before. So looking at this from a young athlete's perspective, what about parents? Like, do you see the dynamic between parent and young athlete? Like, do you do parents see what you're talking about? Like they understand as well, because you can
We're gonna
talk
need
to
another
the
hour for this.
athlete, but you got to make sure that the parents are on board too.
Like I said, we're gonna need another hour for that conversation. So I also, I coach, I coach a U13 AAA team in the GTHL. And I've coached hockey for a while. The parent discussion is an interesting one. They can either support and help the player, or they can be a detriment. And if you have a parent that understands that their role as a parent is to make sure that their athlete shows up on time, is well fed, has had proper sleep, and they allow the coaches, and I'm not saying that all coaches are great, but the coach has a plan, he's got a team, and he's trying to mold the players. Parents should cheer, support, um, don't talk about other kids, don't talk in front of your child. Understand that, and I actually wrote a piece on this, that the association I'm in has used with all of their parents. It's called the car ride home. If parents understand that, as coaches, we only have them for a short period of time, and we're trying to build that foundation of technical, tactical, physical, and mental skills, that four-legged table,
Mm-hmm.
and they get in a car and then they undo that, then we have to continue to build that back up again. And that car ride home, knowing that young athletes are still emotional and haven't understood how to replace that emotion with a behavior yet, that car ride home after a difficult game or a loss can really have long-term effects on how they approach the next outing, right?
Yep.
And I'll share a story with you. When one of the first sessions that I was doing, or one of the teams that I was working with, was a U16 AAA team. So these kids were getting ready for their draft. So I worked with them for 16 weeks during COVID to make sure that things were in lockdown. When they were able to get back on the ice, they were mentally prepared, right? All the physical stuff. We got coaches that do that stuff. One of the questions I asked with a different intention was, what's your biggest fear? So I got 18 or 19, 16-year-olds. And I'm asking them, what's your biggest fear? And my intention was related to the game. More than half the kids raised their hand and said, the car ride home after I play a shit game.
Yeah, I believe it.
Right. So you're asking what the effect of parents is. A lot of times, if I'm hired by a team, I request that the parents sit in the first couple of sessions so that they can understand what the goals of my program are, that they can sit beside their kids, or in the same room as the kids, and participate and ask questions. I think it's important that, when I go in and I'm working with a team, that I lay that foundation of what the expectation is. I'm not there all the time to manage that. And I would hope that as adults, we can take a couple of those lessons and key takeaways with us. And then it's up to the coach and the association. But I can tell you, it's very difficult to manage the parents as well as the players. And you hope that you're trying to build a culture that marries the two, and with the idea that it's all about the development of my child, and it's not about my ego as a parent. And that's sometimes the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I've seen that time and time again. And like when I was doing the scouting, and I sat in the stands and watching a baseball game, and the third baseman comes up and he strikes out, and then you hear the dad in the stands like, "What are you doing? Why are you swinging at that?" And I'm like, "Okay, so just like you, the car ride home, how's that gonna go now?" So if he had a bad game, he's gonna sit in the back seat, front seat, wherever, and he's already down on himself. And for the parent to come on top and be like, why are you doing that? Like all these negative things, it's just going to pound him down even more. And to your point, how everybody raised their hands about the car ride home, worried about what their parents going to say. Right. And we said this off camera before we started recording. All change begins in the home, and it all starts with the parents. When the parents can see this and be there for their child, support them nurture them, guide them, show them the way, a different way from they were brought up to how they can be successful, that is a game changer, no pun intended. Like that is
Sure.
a serious game changer.
Yeah, I have a couple of suggestions for any parents that are watching this is after a competition, good or bad, don't talk about it. Let your kid bring it up. If anything, just say, hey, you know what? I really enjoy watching you play. It looks like you're having fun out there, and you know, and I just want you to know that I love you and I support you no matter what happens. If a kid knows that they have that support behind them, and that it's unconditional and it's not based on whether I score goals or get touchdowns or hit home runs or how well I play in a game, because it's just a game, right?
Mhm.
Then they're likely to develop a stronger sense of self-confidence and awareness and a better attitude to show up and give the coach and the team, you know, the best version of themselves than stumbling in with their head down and their shoulders down because dad just chewed him out on the ride on the way to practice because he had a shit game 3 days ago.
Mhm.
And you know, he better pull up his socks at practice or you're going to walk home and you're not going to, you know, those kind of tactics just don't work, you know, with young minds that aren't fully developed yet, because all they're hearing is negative, negative, negative. And to your point, you know, if that's all you're being drilled with, what you're thinking about now is going to translate to how you perform on the ice or the field, right? Like standing in a tee box and you're looking down the fairway and there's water on the right. First thing we all tell ourselves is don't hit the water, right? And then you swing and where's your ball go? Into the water, because that was the last thought, right? I work with golfers, and you know what we do is we don't worry about that. We have them focus on a landing spot. That's first in an area. And then it gets to the point where I actually having them look down the fairway and visualize a blade of grass in that area. And now see that before you swing and take out all those other distractions. And when you start to dial your mind into those specific things, the results are incredible.
Mhm. And one thing also is to ask the athlete, you know, is this what you want? Because sometimes they're playing the sport because their parents wanted them to. I want you to play in the big league so you can get a nice big contract and get your endorsements and we can retire and get season tickets for whatever, you know. And there's some that love it for the love of the game. They want to play it and that's it. They don't want it, they don't want to pursue it as a career. You know, so understanding that too is like what is their want? You know, what is their need, you know,
Yeah.
moving forward. And you talk about laying in a solid foundation. And I think having parents understanding these things that we're talking about is that solid foundation. And then you can build on top of that. It's almost like you have build a foundation with the athlete, they understand everything, and then you have the parent on top who's just like broken and not understanding everything, and then you continue to build on top of that, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Build high enough, it's the whatever you're building is going to crumble,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no, you're so right, Rob, and the athlete has to be playing the sport because they love it. There's a reason why they're there, right? Not for the parents. It's
Yeah, exactly.
important, and I think sometimes as parents we lose sight of that.
Yeah. So now moving forward in life, everything that you're doing with these athletes, explain how it can be translated into the real world. They're done school, they're looking at, you know, starting up their own business, being an entrepreneur, everything that they were taught as a young athlete, leadership, working in a team, having a vision, having goals, that kind of stuff. How beneficial is that?
It's huge. It becomes it can become a big attribute for a young athlete stepping into the corporate world or the entrepreneurial world, because you know you've created habits, or what I like to call rituals and routines through repetition. The 3 R's that I use in my program: rituals, routines, repetition. You become accustomed to these rituals, these routines and repetition, whether it's I get up at a certain time and after I get up, I make my bed, I drink my water, I have a coffee, I go to the gym. You know, those are all the little small success blocks that you build as an athlete that can become transferable to, how you perform in your work life, right? So I follow similar routines. I get up in the morning, I get ahead of things, and then I use time blocks for my time. So I'm going to answer emails between 8:30 and 10:30, and then I'm going to move on to focusing on three of the most important things that I want to get done for the day, and I create time blocks for those things. Just like an athlete knows what he's supposed to be doing from the time he gets up, or typically should know, till the time he goes to bed, right? You would adjust that a little bit for when you're leaving the sport. In sport, I say that an elite athlete is operating in one of three areas at any point during his season or off season, and that's preparation, training, training or competition, and recovery. It's no different. You can call them different names, but each of those things, each of those areas has rituals or routines that you repeat over and over and over again. And really, success is just that. It's, although we have to have certain skills, those are built into the routines. The mental routine, the physical routine, the nutrition routine. All of those things are part of the success blocks that I think are transferable and part of that foundation.
Mhm.
How to deal with adversity, because that is going to come, and then taking that road of choosing behavior over emotion. And it'll change a little bit as you step out of the sports world and into the real world, and that transition sometimes is difficult for former athletes, but definitely transferable if you don't have those skills. Now the challenge with a lot of former athletes is they wake up when they're done their sport and they go, I don't know what to do.
Mhm. Exactly. And it all comes down to having that right mindset. And to get that right mindset, you need to have that self-awareness, self-realization, the support. Where do you get the support from? The parents. The parents have to be in that right mindset. You see how we're working over here, right?
Absolutely. They're all tied together, all of it. It's not rocket
It's-
science either, right?
Exactly. It's simple. It's not difficult to comprehend. It's just like this. This is what we have to do. But in today's society, it's just steady go, steady go. Social media this, social media that, and you tend to
We're
just.
programming, you use the word, we programmed ourselves. And our reticular activating system was the part of the brain that is like our filing system. By the way we were brought up from the time we were born, those first 7, 8 years, those are the imprint years, right? So a lot of our personality is developed during that. Our reticular activating system will go back to that time and say, oh, well, we did it this way, so it must be right because my family did it this way and my dad did it and my grandfather.
Mhm.
But it's not necessarily the right way. It's just the way that we were taught. Being able to have, Carol Dweck calls it the growth mindset. Being able to have a growth mindset is saying, you know what, maybe I did it this way, but maybe there's a better way or a more efficient way, or an easier way. And being able to look at things, as I talked about earlier, turn that object and look at it from all those different angles. Now you're creating a different perception.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that what you were taught at the beginning is now wrong, but now you have a different option to choose.
Mhm. Exactly. Generational programming. And it's, when do we become aware that it has to stop? When do we understand that shit, that's where that came from? Oh my God. I gotta fix that. Wow. Mind blown.
There's this analogy that I use sometimes, and it was this woman, and for Thanksgiving they were always, or for Easter, whatever the holiday was, she would always take this ham and she would cut the ends off of her ham, and then she would put it in the oven, and she'd make it, and she just did this automatically. One day her daughter said to her, so mom, like, why do you cut the ends off the ham? And she goes, well, I don't know why. My mother used to do it. So the daughter went and asked her grandmother, like, mom cuts the ends off the ham. Why do you cut the ends off the ham? She says, well, we did it because our oven wasn't big enough back in the day to fit the whole ham. So we cut the ends off to make it fit. Talk about generational programming,
Ain't that something, huh?
right?
Wow. That's crazy. No, that's I like that story. I like
Yeah,
that. But you don't even realize until you actually start digging a little bit deeper, ask the right questions and ask the right question to the right person, and then you're gonna get some really good answers.
for sure.
Um, so I got a list here of some key traits or key things that can really be developed within a young athlete and how it can be translated into the real world. And I want you to see if any of these really pops out at you. And if you have a story about anything like that, like by all means, just pipe up. So resilience is one of them.
Mm,
So it enables
resilience.
athletes to endure the inevitable setbacks, the hurdles, like you said, helping them maintain their trajectory toward success. Another one is confidence. That's really self-explanatory. It's believing in your abilities. And I like that one because when you look at our lives, like we are the authority in our lives, right? And you look at the root word of authority, it's author, meaning we are the ones writing the story of our lives. That's why I really like that one.
Yeah, I like it's good.
Um, oh, go ahead.
So two really important words there, resilience and confidence. Um, so I'll take resilience first, and it probably one of the most important tools that a person can develop is resilience. And it's being able to focus on the things you control versus the things you can't control. And when a resilient person presents themselves, they'll look at a situation and knowing that adversity is going to come or how they respond to it, they go back to look at what just happened and say, okay, what happened in this situation? And I'll what are the things that I can control and what are the things I can't control? The things I can control are where I need to put my focus because I know that if I give my attention to the things I focus, I have a better chance of influencing the outcome. And that could be attitude, work ethic, your body language, yourself, all of those components all fall under that resilience thing. It's the ability to not quit or not tell yourself that you're failing. Like when I coach the U13s that I have, we win games, we lose games. What I tell kids is we don't necessarily lose, but we learn. And I ask all my athletes three questions at the end of every competition, and especially the ones where there are opportunities to learn. And it's what did I do well? And part of resilience is asking yourself these questions. What did I do well? Because there's always something that you did well. And we don't want to always start with negative. So give yourself a pat on the back for the things you do well. What can I do better? So looking at the situation, instead of feeling sorry for yourself or negative about it, say, okay, this way didn't work. So how can I do it better? Or what can I do better? And the third question is how? Well, better, and how? How can I do it? The last two become part of your intention. And if you're not doing something with intention, then you're just floating through it. And that's where we typically stall and walk away and quit because we don't have intention on how we're trying to do it and why, right? So if you can learn to control the things you control and let go of the things you can't control, and then put intention behind the things you control, you'll find that you become a little bit more, or you can influence that success and develop that resilience to continue to move forward. Confidence to me is it's not necessarily looking in the mirror and chanting and doing those things, although I do believe in affirmations and positive affirmations as being part of it. But confidence truly comes from preparation. If you've checked the boxes on all those small success boxes that we would build, and I have what I call a success checklist. So did I get up at the right time today? Did I drink my water? Did I take my vitamins? Did I do my stretching? Did I walk outside and get sunlight? Did I do all of those things? And in the sports, it's like, did I show up on time? Was my body language good? Did I listen to the coach? Did I work hard in practice? Did I
Mhm.
put some extra time on the things that I need developing on, skating, shooting, the technical, the tactical things? Did I do all of those things? Come competition, you can look back over the week and say, I had a really good week of preparation. And if I can give myself on average on a scale of 1 to 10, an 8 or a 9 in my effort, attitude, and the way that I practice competition, that's just fun. Now just go out and have fun.
Mhm.
And that's where confidence comes from, preparation.
Right, right. Very good. Excellent. So, well, next one is, focus. You kind of already touched on focus there.
Yeah.
And determination. I like this one. Adaptability and mental toughness.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
Those are two key things. Like as humans, we adapt. The world is always changing and we adapt to the things that are happening around us. But when it comes to, different situations, we got to make sure that we understand we can adapt in a positive way. And then mental toughness is just, it goes back to confidence, I guess, with mental toughness, really.
Confidence and resilience. That's mental toughness in a nutshell,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's being able to step over those thoughts of what other people are saying, expectations, all of those things going intrinsically into yourself, and saying, I don't care what he said or she says or what they say about me. I have a vision of where I want to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. It may not be successful today, but I'm going to try and get 1% better tomorrow, right? And if you can wake up with that attitude every day and not let external forces, things you don't control, influence you, then you become mentally tough.
Absolutely. And that's a big thing too. Oh, it's raining outside or it's snowing. Oh, I can't do it. You can't control that. It's Mother Nature. It's gonna happen, you know.
You're going to have to put yourself in, you're going to have to step outside your comfort zone. If you're going to be successful, you have to learn to step outside your comfort zone, and you have to embrace things that are hard to do. That's callousing your mind, doing like I do cold plunges. Do I like them? No, I hate them. It's cold, it hurts, it stings, but I do them because I'm mentally toughening myself up. If you can do things on a consistent basis that you don't want to do, when those other opportunities or uh, 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 times when you've got to push yourself through things, you
Hmm.
have fallback to say, well, if I can do this and this and sit in a cold plunge and run in the rain, and I can step over this obstacle, no problem, right? And it's mentally controlling those. Remember, our brain, its purpose is survival, right? It's the that lizard brain that says fight, flight, or freeze. And we're always looking for, our brain is looking for the most efficient way to get things done. What you got to do is you have to overcome your brain, which is telling your body, well, the bed's nice and warm this morning, I'll just lie here for another half hour. It looks cold and rainy outside. You go, no, man, sit up, put your feet on the floor, put your shoes on, and get outside. That's developing that mental toughness, doing
Yeah.
things you want to
We call that revenge of the ego.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the ego that keeps you complacent, keeps you comfortable. Like you said, it's like, oh, we're laying in bed and it's nice and comfy, cozy under the blanket while it's snowing or raining outside. It's like that's the ego talking. It's not the part that really is going to move you. You know, it's
Listen, if you're an athlete and that's what's going through your mind, the other thought I want you to think about is, well, there's somebody out there competing for the spot that I want, that's getting up and going out and running in the rain while I lay here. So they're getting better while you're not. I,
exactly.
I play little mind games with myself, and I teach my athletes to do the same thing, because it's important that they understand that if you're going to take the easy way, there's somebody else that isn't. And when push comes to shove, the higher you go, when it's talent versus talent, mental toughness is going to be the tool that's going to propel you past that individual. It's not just about skill and talent.
Exactly. And brings back to my last one here is mental preparation. Make sure that you're mentally primed to be at your best. So it's like everything that we talked about on this list is just, it can be translated to many different things, many
Oh, man.
aspects of life, right? So to wrap things up now, what are some messages? Two messages. First one, talking to parents. We've touched on before how important it is for a parent to understand themselves and understand what is going through the mind of their child when it comes to being an athlete, but also to look past that and see where do they want to be down the road. Do they want to, be an entrepreneur, run their own business? What is required to do that? Mental toughness, to be able to be a leader, business acumen, vocabulary, all those kind of things are key. Are they there to support them in that? So what is the message that you have for parents?
Yeah, I think you just touched on a bunch of the aspects, and I would just tell parents, you know, um, be as supportive of you as you can. Talk about, what your kids want to do. Let them use their imagination. And I think this would be the biggest point. As we get older, we use our imagination less and less, right? And we know, and science has proven it, that if you can visualize something in the future and work towards that goal, without asking two questions, without asking how and when, but just getting up, and I call it mastering the mundane and doing these things over and over. Parents, allow your kids to dream, allow them to use their imagination, give them that freedom. As we get older, we take that away, and we become programmed to not use our brain and imagine things. But if you look at the people that have made the biggest changes in the world, it's the dreamers. It's the scheme. They didn't necessarily have all of the degrees and the doctorates, and they weren't always the smartest person. Sometimes it's that kid that's sitting back in class and daydreaming about things that haven't happened that are the ones that change the world. So I would say, parents, be supportive, love your kids, let them know that you're always there to support them, and allow them the opportunity to be kids and dream. You never know what comes out of those dreams, and let them pursue them. Don't put them or shoehorn them into what you think they should be, because your parents did that to you. Allow them to choose.
Exactly. Like you look at Elon Musk. I'm sure one day you thought, oh, I'm gonna make an electric car, or a car that'll drive itself, or I'm gonna make rocket ships that go by themselves to the moon. And I'm sure he was laughed at. Same
Oh my
thing,
gosh.
same thing with Donald Trump. I'm gonna buy property and sell it and resell it and be, a real estate magnate. And I'm gonna be the president one day. I think when he said that, I laughed.
Sure.
And look what happened. You know?
If your dreams aren't big enough to scare you or make people think you're crazy, then you're not dreaming big enough.
Very true. Very true. Very true. Now, what about a message to the young athletes out there, those who, want to be an athlete, who want to have the best for themselves in their life, to, you know, do it for them, do it for themselves.
I would say this: there's this myth out there that you have a choice. And if you want to be the best at your sport, you don't have the choices you think you have. And if you look at it like success leaves clues, look at the people that are the best in your sport that you are attaining to become, and understand that, you know, you might think there are things you have to give up or sacrifice, not going to the dance, hanging out, going to the mall, playing video games. Those are not choices. Those are things you do that you have to do to be as successful as you want to be. You can't have that dream and think that you can do those things as well. There's this idea that, well, you can choose this or you can't. The road to success is already been paved by people ahead of you. So watch what they do what they do, and understand that you're really not giving anything up. You're being prepared. You're being tested. Everything in life, I tell my kids this: everything that happens to you is a test. How you respond shows whether you want to achieve what you say you do or not. And I break it down into one really simple thing that I use when I'm talking to younger kids: I'll hold up an apple or a bag of Doritos at the front of the room. And I'll say, which one of these is healthier? Well, they all pick the apple. I'll go, sometimes you like the Doritos, right? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Challenge is if you choose the Doritos over and over and over again, it becomes easier to choose the Doritos. And one day, a year from now, 2 years, 3 years from now, you're stuck in a bag of Doritos wishing you chose the apple.
Nice, nice. See all this food. I'm fasting right now, so all this food talk is like, I'll take whatever. I'll take whatever right now.
For you. How long are you fasting?
I'm shooting for 72 hours.
Yeah, I do
Yesterday,
that once a
yesterday I
quarter.
had all water with some electrolytes and some black coffee. Today I'm having more of a like some protein drinks, just a little bit of introducing some liquid and more vitamins in my body. And tomorrow it'll be more liquid, but with like a bone broth for like lunch
Okay.
and dinner. And there's one called Kettle and Fire that's
I
got
use that. Yeah, it's
19
awesome.
grams of protein and it's
Yeah,
seasoned nicely, so it's like gives you a little bit of something,
yeah.
So
You
just
got a
kind of,
budget to buy that stuff. It's not cheap.
oh, it's not. Oh, they have it here where I am down in Fort Erie, and then I went to Buffalo to Wegmans to get it down there, and it's like it's just cheaper in Wegmans, but it's like to get there is like
You're paying
pain
for
in
it
the
one way or another.
neck.
Yeah.
But good
Everything's online,
nonetheless. Good
and it
nonetheless.
cost me a fortune. That's why I only do it once in a while.
Exactly, exactly.
I think it's such an important thing to reset your body. Good for you.
Exactly. Thank you.
That'll
Thank you.
teach some mental toughness too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially, my wife's making dinner, and I'm like, smells so good in the house.
Go, just stand over the stove and smell it and go, I got this. I got this.
I
That'll
can,
be a test
yeah,
for you.
that develops good willpower there.
That's,
So what's on the docket for Mindset, Body, and Bank? What do you have coming up?
well,
Promote yourself.
winding down hockey season right now. Next for me is I've got a little side project I'm working on where I want to come out with some, sort of a do-it-yourself video series for people to go on. So that a lot of times my programs right now are live, where I'm either doing a Zoom call like this or I'm in person. And I'd like to make myself more accessible and make it more of a one-to-many type of offer that people will be able to go in and access, where we might meet at the beginning of the program and then once in the middle and once at the end, just to kind of track progress and be able to ask questions. But certainly I want to be able to create an offering where people can go in and work at their own self pace. So
Awesome.
that's kind of what's next. And now we're heading into tryout season. So I'll be busy with some of my minor hockey players, getting them ready. I'll have a mental prep session going into tryouts,
Mhm.
and then move into some summer sports when things will slow down a little bit. But I will be working with a new sports academy called Sync Sports that's going to be out of Oakville. It'll be focused on lacrosse and hockey players, and it'll the programs will sort of move through the summertime
Mhm.
and
Okay,
to help develop those athletes in those sports and get recognized for potential scholarships.
oh, nice, nice. So any links that Rob has, I'm going to put that in the description below on YouTube. And I am looking to get it on Rumble as well, so can expand my reach a little bit. So yeah, any more questions, reach out to myself or Rob, and we can have a great conversation about positive mindset. And nothing happens if you don't have a conversation. It all starts with a conversation. So Rob, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining me today on the Spehar Initiative, and best of luck to your future endeavors so that you have going on.
Awesome. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Rob. Great chatting with you, and hopefully we stay connected and
Absolutely.
share our message out there for sure.
Absolutely. And you are always welcome back on the show whenever and just have a conversation about this kind of stuff to educate others.
Perfect. Perfect. Enjoy.
Excellent.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks. And everybody out there who's listening, who's watching, thanks for tuning in to the Spehar Initiative. Stay tuned for the next one. And I'm going to leave off with this, just exactly how I started it. Your mindset is a true reflection of who you are as a person. Until next time, we'll see you online. Peace.